Hi again. Let's continue talking about React Native and components in general, and React components, right? So, in our last video, we kind of set up our mock-up of our weather app there, and I did this daily forecast, and it was really good for us to break up the two text fields and their container div that represented each day of the daily forecast, and break that into a component here that contained the elements and their style, right, in a very short, easy read way, and we're just passing in props to get the values into those components, right? So the props are setting the values that's displayed here. So that makes this component very flexible because we can display anything we want. It doesn't even have to be the day of the week or the temperature, right? Of course, if it's the temperature, it's always going to have this little temp, the degree symbol there, right? But anyway, we can actually do this one better, right? So really, this whole area here, if I go back to app.js, this view that contains all of the days of the week, right? This really should be its own component, right? And what we do is we pass in an array of the day of the week and the temperature. And really, maybe it would be an array of date objects with the temperature for each of those dates, right? So let's give that a try, right? So, and this is really like the secret of React that I think really makes it great. It's kind of the secret sauce, right? Is that the component architecture makes a lot of sense, and it's really fun to use. It's really easy to use. It's very flexible too, right? And that's how React works. Is like everything is components, and you're just building components that you're nesting within other components, right? So when we build the daily view, right, or the daily forecast view, we're gonna have it's gonna have daily forecasts embedded inside it, and then we'll just embed one daily view here. So I'm going to make a new file in my folder here. So I'll choose new file. I'll choose daily view, or I'll name it dailyview.js. And here we'll say import React and component from React, and we'll need to import view, and maybe we need text. Maybe we don't even need text. I think we'll need view, and we'll need style sheet. You can always add any components that we're missing, to this later, right? So we'll import these from React Native. Okay, and this view is going to import the daily forecast, right? So let's import that also. So I'll say import daily forecast from, and since we're in the same folder here, we can say / daily forecast. Okay, and now we'll have to say export default class is daily view, and it extends component. Oops, I put the quotes there. And the curly braces, right? And every component must implement a render method that returns some JSX. Okay? So that looks pretty good. And then we should do the same thing that we did before. We'll say const styles equals style sheet dot create, and we'll create a style sheet there. Okay? So how's our daily forecast going to work, right? Well, what I'd like to do is I'd like to grab the code that we have here, and essentially like all of this goes into our daily forecast, right? So I'll just cut that out, right? Just I'm back in app.js, and I found my block here. That's the view containing the 5 daily forecasts. I'm just going to cut and paste that into the daily view. So we go here. Okay, and this has some styles that are called .forecast, and we don't have those here. So I'll go back to app.js, and since we've removed that, we don't need those styles here anymore. So I'll grab them here off the end of my style sheet and paste them into the daily view style sheet. Okay, So we'll save that. And then now we want to display, like right now, let's take a look here, right? Like right now the daily view is totally absent, right? So what we'll do is we will go back to app.js here, and where the daily view was, we're going to want to import that. And we'll put it here, right? So it'll be like daily view, right? But we don't have the daily view imported up here. We're doing daily forecast, and daily forecast doesn't exist in here anymore, so we don't need this guy. So I'm going to just change this to daily view, and instead of daily forecast here, we'll import the daily view. Okay, let's see how that goes, right? Oh, there we go, we're back to where we were before. But now we've just got a single component that we know represents all of the 5 days of the week and displays them, right? And we can actually do this even one better, right? So when we pass the daily view in here, we could pass in let's call this daily weather, right? We'll set daily weather equal to an array, right? And it will be kind of long to type the values in here, right? So what I think I'll do is I'll just define them here, and we could put them anywhere. Really what we want to do is get them from outside of our component. Like we want to go out on the internet and talk to a weather API and actually get the daily weather forecast. But for right now, why don't we just pass in the numbers, right? So what we'll do is we'll just pass in the values, and we'll have to define them. Maybe I'll just go to the top here and I'll say const, call it daily weather equals an array, and our array will have, we could use JavaScript like a date object, and that would be best, but if we're going to just do this by hand, I'll just put the day in as a string. So we'll call this day. Let's just call this date, because later maybe we want to actually use a date, but I'll call this Monday, and then the temp will be, 67 degrees. You can tell I live in California. Right, and then we'll do we'll do 5 of these, right? Right, a couple commas here at the end. And this will be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and it's not 67 every day. It's going to be 65, 63, 66, and 64. I don't know, right? Okay, there we go. Right, so now I think that looks pretty good. So we've got our daily weather, and what we'll do is we'll pass that in here, right? So I'll put that there, and that again will create a prop on the daily view object that will have this array attached to it, right? So it'll be this array of objects. So let's go back to daily view, and what we want to do is we want to map the daily views to the daily forecast objects. So map allows us to convert an array of one type of thing into an array of something else. It lets us transform elements in an array. So we're going to get this, we're going to look at our array of objects, JavaScript objects, and convert them into a new array of daily forecast objects. So let's put that here at the top of our render method. Let's say const views equal this dot props dot daily weather. Remember, that was the property that we passed in to the daily weather object up here, right? We called it daily weather. Let's actually separate this a little bit, right? So this is the thing we're working on, and we're passing in a value, an array here, into this name, and this name will end up on props inside of our view, right? So it'll be this dot props dot daily weather. And what we'd like to do is we'd like to map this, okay? I'm going to use the ES6 style function, and this function, this is a function right here. It takes in parameters here in the parentheses, and then it runs this block of code, right? And so what we need to do is we need to take in the day, right? So that'll be an object with the day, or with the date and the temperature, and then it's going to give us an index also, right? So we'll get the index as I, and what we need to do is we need to return the new object, or if we transform this into something else. So we're going to get a date object, right, with a date and a temperature, and we're going to want to transform it into one of these. So I'll just copy this. I'll make a daily forecast object, and the day of the week here will be day.date, and the temperature will be day.temp, okay? And then we can delete all of these guys, right? So we'll have a series of views, and those views is essentially, this will just be an array. So when we do weather or daily weather.map, when we take one array and we map it, the map method returns an array of new things. So we started with an array of objects, and we took each one of those objects and transformed them into an array of JSX or daily forecast objects, and those will be in this variable, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to put these views down here, and React is very smart. If you give it an array of JSX objects, it just automatically iterates over them. So if we have a bunch of these in here, when we put this variable views right here, React will automatically render each one of those. Okay, it'll iterate over them and print each one of them here. Okay, so let's give that a try. Let's see what we got. So I got an error there, but I think that was because while I was working, I saved and it gave me an error, right? So so anyway, there we go, right? Oh, we've got all these guys here, and they got our values, and all the values are coming from app.js in this array at the top here. So for example, if the temperatures were not quite as good as they are here, if I made it 57, 55, 56, 54, and 57 again, right? Then I can have these values there, 57, 55, right? Okay, and if I wanted to change the days of the week, I could do that, and then this component would display them. And when I look at the code that I have, you can see I've just got one object that represents the days of the week. I pass it in an array, and if I wanted to add another day of the week here, like let's say after Saturday, I also want to squeeze in, or after Friday, I want to squeeze in a Saturday, so I'll put Saturday there. And you can see right now it says Friday, but when I squeeze this one in, let's say it's 58 degrees on Saturday, and when I save, I'll get Saturday here. Now, if I try to squeeze too many of these, I'm going to have a problem, right? But, just because of the layout. But, this is pretty flexible, right? Like I can pass in an array and display as many of them as I like. And when I do that, when I look at the daily weather component, right, or the daily view component, when I look here, this is really pretty short, right? I've just got a render method that renders a bunch of views. And the views are generated by mapping them, right? So I map each one of the items in this array, and I just map it to one view. So the code I had before, I had 5 lines of daily forecast, but now I just have 1 line. And so if I need to make a change to the daily forecast, I can do it here very easily, right? And again, like daily forecast has to have its own layout. It has to be laid out in a column, and it has its own settings for the temperature size and the day of the week. And if I look at that, I've just got one component here that has 2 text fields, and it has its own style sheet. So this is very easy to edit, right? I'm not duplicating a lot of code. So that's the beauty of React. I hope you guys like that, and I hope you build great projects with it. So thanks for watching, and then maybe we'll continue to do some more stuff in the next video.